Hello there. Today I've got something pretty special for you. Recently, I was sent something that really piqued my interest. The Silencer is a horror series that officially started on YouTube only a few days ago. And I gotta say, this is shaping up to be one of the coolest and most solid projects I've had the pleasure to talk about in a while. Let's get right into it to give you a taste. My name is Sophia. Something awful happened. I felt fingers twisting in my chest. Then I was trapped. And then it was here. We get a glimpse of it. A lanky and crooked creature with a pointy head and a face that looks like a Japanese no mask. I tried to tell Vicente. But he couldn't hear me. No one can hear me. Sophia tries to wake the man beside her, which I'm assuming is Vicente, to no avail. She tells him that it's here again, and we hear a nasty sound coming from the empty hallway. The screen cuts to black and Sophia asks, "Will it trap me like this forever?" And we hear this. Maybe this time he'll hear this. We see Vicente doing the dishes and Sophia drops a plate from the counter trying to get his attention. It shatters on the ground, but when she looks up, it's whole and back on the counter once again. She adds, "It never works." Sophia then scribbles, "It wants me," on the wall and asks Vicente if he can see it, but again he doesn't seem to react. And then... So we get another glimpse of the main monster of this project, shushing the protagonist. The silencer that the title refers to, I'm assuming. From these very first few scenes, I was already hooked. I immediately fell in love with the art style, which, as will become even more noticeable going forward, blends both animated scenes and still frames. This immediately reminded me of classic point-and-click games like Myst. And it's a perfect way to keep the viewers on their toes, because you never know what to expect in the next scene, which works very well to enhance the horror. And then there's the sound design, which I can't praise enough. From the use of piano sounds for the dialogues to the ambient drones to the disgusting crackling and squeaking of the silencer itself, which sounds like something straight out of Silent Hill. Just amazing. The atmosphere here is heavy. The next thing Sophia tells us is that it doesn't like it when she shouts. And we see her shouting repeatedly for help while Vicente washes the dishes again. But she gets interrupted by a thud and more crackling sounds, so she goes and explores the dark apartment. Nothing really happens, but we do see a family picture on the wall which might be relevant, as we'll find out. We get to see our characters' faces up close, and once again we can notice the effect that the monster has on her, seemingly preventing her from communicating its presence. Going so far as to change her words and, as we've seen before, reverting anything else she does to get attention. I love the desperate sound cue used here. The wail that gets suddenly cut off is a perfect representation of how our character feels and of the way she is being manipulated. And of course we see that lanky thing leering from the corner once again. It'll only get worse. What does it want? That ending was tight. I hope I didn't break up the pacing of the episode too much, but I don't want to just show you the whole thing with no comments for obvious reasons. Though I highly recommend you to watch it by yourself and then come back here if you're interested in my analysis, because it deserves to be seen with no breaks. The link will be in the description. So this first episode is short and sweet, and it gives us the basis for the main dynamic in the series. Sophia is stalked by this creature that looks like it came straight out of Boisvert's nightmares, which has the ability to change what she says and prevents her from communicating with who I'm assuming is her partner, Vicente. From her words, we can understand that it's been probably happening for a long time now, though how long we do not know yet. I'll already tell you that the series revolves around a very literal manifestation of a more abstract and complex issue, and it shouldn't be hard to figure out. It will become especially clear in the following episode, but before I tell you my interpretation of it, I'm curious to know what you see in this. Maybe to me it just seems clearer than it actually is, and I'm missing some pretty obvious clues. Let's keep going. The next part is titled, I Need a Drink. We start again with Sophia telling us that no one can hear her. She comes up behind Vicente and tries to get his attention, telling him that it's here. He just gets up from the couch and leaves. And it's then that somebody knocks on the front door. We see a person come in holding a 6-pack of beers. He asks Sophia if she is hungry. This is Julio, Sophia's brother. In the first episode, she mentioned that he was going to visit them. Maybe they'll hear this. Once more, Sophia tries to get attention by breaking something. This time it's the 6-pack, but of course it doesn't work. My brother isn't doing well. I wish I could talk to him. It becomes pretty clear that Julio has a drug problem. He'll smoke the wrong thing one day. We're reminded that the silencer is always watching over our character. In the next section, we find out why her brother is spiraling. As a child, he witnessed the death of their father, and from the looks of it, it was a gruesome affair, possibly self-inflicted. We see Kid Julio stained with blood, freezing up and not responding to his sister. We're back in present day and Julio has disappeared. Sophia starts searching for him around the house and she finds him overdosing on the bathroom floor. Frantically, she tries to call Vicente for help, but once again, we understand that her words are being manipulated, because he just calmly replies to her like she's talking about watching a TV show. While the monster is right beside her. She runs back to Julio and cradles him in her arms. Then, strangely, he starts heating up the drugs in the aluminum foil while we hear footsteps approaching. As the silencer watches them from the doorway, Julio administers Sophia the drug. We're in the bathroom once more. Sophia's vision is wavy and Julio is sitting beside her. For the first time, we see some sunlight and we can even hear birds chirping outside. He apologizes and says that he had to do it, that he's been trying to tell her something. That's when we switch to his perspective. My name is Julio. No one has heard me since I was 7. And I'll let this part play out because it's just so good. We see his actual reaction to his father's passing. And we see the silencer coming out behind Sophia. He tries to warn her, but his real words get warped by the creature. That's why his sister thought he just froze up in that moment. We're then shown the thing's shadow constantly follow Julio throughout his life, until he finds a beer and realizes that the silencer disappears when he drinks. My sister isn't doing well. We understand that both siblings are trapped by the monster. And in a last-ditch effort to save her from it, Julio decides to use the only solution he knows, getting high. When we're high, we can hear each other. Julio grabs Sophia and tells her they need to go. While driving away in the car, he offers her a pipe, telling her to keep taking the drug or it will take her. And we reach the end of episode 2. That was amazing and also pretty rough, not gonna lie. If we put together all the clues we've got so far, their father's probable suicide, their inability to communicate what they really want to the people around them, the drugs as an escape from this dreadful condition, the picture really starts to come together. It seems to me that the main themes of the Silencer are depression and trauma, and that the monster itself is a physical manifestation of this. From the way everything is set up, we can infer that their father might have also been plagued by the Silencer, which probably led him to take his own life. The trauma of such an event ended up marking our two protagonists, something that is also represented quite literally by child Julio being stained with blood. It seems that the Silencer, after probably entrapping their dad throughout his life, is finally done with him, and chooses the two children as his next victims, in a very, again, literal example of the burdens of the fathers passing down to their kids. And so now they have to contend with this monster that only they can see, while it plagues their everyday existence and makes it impossible to communicate with others. Much like actual depression and trauma might prevent someone from expressing how they really feel, keeping everything bottled up inside, and even in the case where they try to explain what's going on, they might not be able to articulate it properly. This can stem from many reasons, both cultural and individual. There might simply be a societal taboo around mental health. Lord knows that in big 2025 I still hear my fair share of "depression doesn't exist and people just need a kick in the butt" arguments, or just the general stigma about mental health issues which leads people to be treated like freaks. Here's my hot take: I've never met anybody who doesn't have at least some kind of mental health or personality struggle. It's just that a lot of these are actually culturally tolerated as a part of normalcy and never really explored further. How many parents with serious anger issues are living their life like that's just a normal consequence of having kids, because the kids are less stressful? No shit, everybody knows it's stressful, that's why you should get help. Anyway, other more personal reasons that lead to a struggle in communication in these cases might be personal shame, possibly as a consequence of the previous point, but maybe also lived on a deeply individual level and not so much in a "what will others think?" Paranoia and anxiety towards the world around you, or a simple incapacity to actually put feelings and emotions into words because, well, those things are very complex and somewhat abstract. I hope this never happens to any of you, but one of the worst feelings in my opinion is opening up to a person that's really close to you, truly telling them how you really feel, going into minute, sorrowful details, for them to just tell you at the end that they don't get it. At that moment, you could think that maybe it's better to just move on and shut up, and say that you're fine the next time they ask, because what's the point anyway? And this is obviously a very slippery slope that might lead into a spiral. The more you lock yourself up, the lonelier you'll become. And the lonelier you are, the less you'll be able to talk to others about what you're going through. And I think that this is exactly what the Silencer is putting on display here. Sofia and Julio have probably been in this spiral for so long that even if they wanted to talk about it at this point, they wouldn't be able to. Their ability to truly communicate atrophied like a muscle that hasn't been used in a while. All of this can too often lead to the other issue that seems very central to the Silencer: addiction and escapism. The scariest line in these two short episodes for me is, "When we're high, we can hear each other." I probably don't have to tell you that in a situation like the one described before, many people turn to drugs as an attempt to escape, even if only for the short duration of the high. And if the situation wasn't bad before, throw in an addiction or two, and you really got yourself a pit that's very hard to climb out of. A drug addiction is often a surefire way to exacerbate the issues that were already there, both socially and psychologically. What seems at first to provide some relief might in the long run heighten your anxiety, deepen your depression, and even lead to tragedy. But what's even more disturbing, and this is what the Silencer shows us, is that indeed they might give you the impression that things are better or easier under the influence. And that's really hard to get over. Hell, even just drinking a few beers might make some people suddenly open up about stuff they've been holding in for a long time, lowering their inhibitions and providing a chance to talk with an open heart. Lord knows I've been there. And that's what we see our characters do. Julio finally realizes how to keep the monster at bay when he drinks a beer. And then him making Sofia take drugs just so the two of them can finally hear each other, and at the end in the car basically telling her to keep the high going or else the Silencer will be back. It's horrifying, and I'm curious to see where the series goes with this element, because it's walking in a pretty treacherous gray area. Some people might look at this episode and think that it's glorifying drugs, others that it's actually showing us a further worsening of their problems and not a solution at all. But I like to think that it's simply showing us their reality at this moment, and hopefully it won't be black and white about these issues of abuse and addiction, but we'll use them as some of its main complex themes to be explored in different facets. Speaking of horror manifestations of grief, trauma, and depression, the theme has been very present in cinema, especially in the last decade, with acclaimed films like Hereditary and Midsommar, Talk to Me and the recent and great Bring Her Back, lesser known but still relevant movies like Possum, Incantation, The Ritual, A Dark Song, The Night House, and others, all putting it at the front of their writing. But of course, the most relevant film for us here, and you can stop shouting at the screen now, is 2014's The Babadook, which to me seems to have kicked this grief or depression as a monster trend into high gear. For those who don't know, The Babadook centers around a widow and her 6-year-old son. Her husband died in a car crash while taking her to a hospital to give birth, so both characters are trying to cope with their own trauma, one from losing her life partner and the other from never knowing his dad. Their relationship gradually turns more strained as the mother becomes unable to properly care for her, honestly mildly troubled kid, heading towards a dangerous nervous breakdown. Her inability to get over her husband's death and the growing resentment towards her kid eventually manifests in the so-called Mr. Babadook, a dark and long-clawed presence that hides in the shadows and wants to take over her body. Now, The Silencer, in my opinion, seems to be inspired by the Babadook both in the way it tackles its themes, in the look of the monster, and even in the sound design that accompanies it. In The Babadook, for example, we can often hear the squeaking and crackling of wood and the scurrying of insects or rats. Obviously, we can see other influences here, especially from internet horror. The first things that came to my mind were Boisvert and Dr. Nowhere. And there's probably other stuff that I'm forgetting right now, so please tell me out there in the comments. But if this goes in the metaphorical direction of the Babadook, I'm really interested to see how the themes are resolved, especially because of the added layer of addiction, and I wonder how everything's going to be handled, seeing as there's been a big shift right there at the end, with Sofia and Julio being on the run from the monster. In the Babadook, the metaphor stays present the whole time. There's no resolution like it was all a hallucination or a dream or something, which would have been really lame. I like it when these kinds of stories, while being allegorical, still stick to the reality they present. And in The Silencer, I hope this is also the case. I think it would be better if the monster was actually real, and if the next episode was a sort of road trip story where the characters are constantly chased by the presence, needing to make the time to come up with a plan or to at least finally really have the chance to speak to each other. Maybe the communication itself is what will finally stop the spiral. Like finding somebody who truly understands you in the real world might save your life. Also, remember when I pointed out the picture in that scene of Sofia walking around the apartment? In it, we see a traditional family of 2 parents and 2 children. I assume that the kids are Sofia and Julio themselves and that the man is their father. But that would mean that throughout all of this, somebody has been missing. The mother. Now, I obviously might be reading too much into this, and it might be just a stock image that we weren't supposed to focus on, but I find that a bit hard to believe, especially since it also appears in Sofia's memory. Isn't it strange that, with all we've been shown, the protagonist's mother is never mentioned? She must have some sort of role in all of this. Perhaps that's where Julio and Sofia are headed at the end, to speak to her. Maybe she knows something, assuming she is even alive. Or hell, for all I know, the silencer itself could actually represent the mother. This could all turn out to be about parental abuse and trauma at her hands. She might have been the one to kill their father, and then force her children to keep their mouths shut about it, scarring them for life. It could also be about a family heavily burdened by schizophrenia, but I honestly know so little about the condition that it doesn't feel very respectful to theorize on it. Anyway it decides to go, I think it should still be pretty interesting. Also, I want to add that with all the analog horror I've covered on this channel, it's kind of refreshing to see a new YouTube horror project that does something different and is not scared to build its own recognizable identity. I really hope to see more experimentation with the mix of stillness and motion of the visuals going forward, because it can be incredibly jarring in a good way. It's kind of like the game Faith switching suddenly between 8-bit 2D graphics and rotoscoped cutscenes. I don't know why that was my first example. Maybe a better one would be that Bong Chung-dong Ghost webtoon with the sudden moving jump scare at the end. That shit traumatized me. Anyway, you get what I mean. Even just a few switches here between a slower, almost claymation type of frame rate and sudden smooth movements, when the creature moves its claws for example, were extremely effective. The series to me has the potential to be the next big horror project on YouTube. It has a distinctive visual identity, an engaging setup for a story with a relatable metaphor, and some very unique and creative sound design. There's not much else I can say, really. I know this is a pretty short one, folks, I'm sorry. But before I go, I wanted to tell you that I've opened a Patreon. I've posted only a few things on it for now, but I intend to use it as a sort of main hub, with both public and members posts, so if you want to support the channel, consider joining. For now, I want to thank Buckshot Bandit 827, Diesel Cascade, and my good friend Rob for being my first Slavic Doomers. I'll see you in the next one, and see you, Space Babadooks.